आजकल हम एक बहुत ही अजीब समय में जी रहे हैं। एक ऐसा दौर जहां एक तरफ तो हम साइंस और टेक्नोलॉजी में चांद मंगल तक पहुंच रहे हैं और दूसरी तरफ यही दुनिया, हमारी दुनिया, भयानक लड़ाइयों की आग में जल रही है।
ये एक बहुत ही चौंकाने वाली बात है ना? कि एक तरफ तो हम एआई जैसी कमाल की टेक्नोलॉजी बना रहे हैं, मतलब जो पूरी दुनिया बदल सकती है, और ठीक उसी वक्त हम ये भी देख रहे हैं कि युद्ध और नफरत कितनी तेजी से, कितने खतरनाक तरीके से बढ़ रहे हैं। तो सवाल ये उठता है कि ये दोनों चीजें एक साथ एक ही दुनिया में कैसे हो सकती हैं? तो जिस सोर्स पर ये एनालिसिस आधारित है, वो आज की इन लड़ाइयों को एक बहुत ही, कह सकते हैं, चौंकाने वाला नाम देता है। वो इसे कहते हैं मूर्खों का युद्ध। अब सुनने में ये शब्द थोड़ा कठोर लग सकता है, लेकिन इसके पीछे की जो वजह है उसे समझना बहुत जरूरी है।
देखिए, अभी दुनिया में मोटे तौर पर 3 बड़े कॉन्फ्लिक्ट चल रहे हैं। एक तो रूस यूक्रेन का युद्ध, जिसके बारे में हम सब जानते हैं। फिर मिडिल ईस्ट में जो तनाव है वो लगातार बढ़ता ही जा रहा है। और एक्सपर्ट्स एक तीसरी बड़ी लड़ाई की चेतावनी दे रहे हैं, 2026 तक ईरान के साथ एक युद्ध, जो अमेरिका और इजराइल के हमले के बाद भड़क सकता है। और सबसे बड़ा डर यही है कि ये छोटी छोटी चिंगारियां कहीं मिलकर एक बहुत बड़ी, पूरी दुनिया को चपेट में लेने वाली आग न बन जाएं।
तो फिर इस मूर्खों का युद्ध का असल मतलब क्या है? इसका सीधा सा मतलब ये है कि इन लड़ाइयों को शुरू करने का फैसला कौन लेता है? कुछ गिने चुने लोग, नेता, हथियार बनाने वाली कंपनियां और वो बड़े बड़े देश जो जियोपॉलिटिक्स का खेल खेलते हैं। लेकिन इसकी असली कीमत कौन चुकाता है? वो चुकाते हैं सैनिक, आम लोग और हमारे बच्चे। चलिए, अब थोड़ा और गहराई में चलते हैं। इन लड़ाइयों की असली जड़ क्या है? मतलब जो खबरें हम टीवी पर देखते हैं, उनके पीछे वो कौन सी छिपी हुई ताकतें हैं जो इस आग में घी डालने का काम कर रही हैं?
सवाल बहुत सीधा सा है कि आखिर ये लड़ाइयां हो ही क्यों रही हैं? क्या ये सिर्फ जमीन के टुकड़ों के लिए हैं, या इसके पीछे की कहानी कुछ और ही है? इस सोर्स के एनालिसिस में इसका जवाब छिपा है।
तो इस सोर्स के मुताबिक हर लड़ाई के पीछे 3 तरह की ताकतें काम करती है। सबसे पहली है मसल पावर, यानी फौजी ताकत, अपनी दादागिरी दिखाने की कोशिश। दूसरी है मनी पावर, मतलब पैसे का खेल, हथियार बनाने वालों का, तेल और दूसरे रिसोर्सेज का, ये सारा जो बिजनेस है। और तीसरी, और शायद सबसे अहम, नैरेटिव पावर, मतलब कहानी कौन सुना रहा है। प्रोपेगेंडा और मीडिया का इस्तेमाल करके ये तय करना कि कौन सही है और कौन गलत।
लेकिन इन तीनों ताकतों से भी ज्यादा खतरनाक एक और चीज है, और वो है बौद्धिक चुप्पी। मतलब दुनिया के जो पढ़े लिखे लोग हैं, साइंटिस्ट हैं, टीचर्स हैं, जो समाज को दिशा दिखाते हैं, उनकी खामोशी। क्योंकि जब सवाल पूछने वाले ही चुप हो जाएं, तो फिर सही गलत का फैसला कौन करेगा?
तो क्या इसका मतलब है कि कोई उम्मीद ही नहीं है? क्या कोई रास्ता नहीं है? यहीं पर एक बहुत ही इंटरेस्टिंग टेक बेस्ड आइडिया सामने आता है। एक ऐसा आइडिया जो प्रॉब्लम से हटकर एक सॉल्यूशन की तरफ इशारा करता है। इस आइडिया का नाम है AI.थर्ड आई। अब ये है क्या? ये एक ग्लोबल AI प्लेटफॉर्म बनाने का प्रपोजल है। एक ऐसा सिस्टम जो झूठ को पकड़ सके, करप्शन को सबके सामने ला सके और जो नफरत फैलाने वाली झूठी खबरें होती हैं, उनको पहचान सके। इसका मकसद सीधा है, समाज को सच के आधार पर, सही जानकारी के आधार पर बेहतर फैसले लेने में मदद करना।
और हाँ, एक और इंटरेस्टिंग बात यह है कि एआई थर्ड आई अकेला नहीं है। ये एक बड़े विजन का हिस्सा है जिसे माँ भारती विजन का नाम दिया गया है। और इसके 5 मेन पिलर्स हैं। एआई के जरिए ट्रांसपेरेंसी, मतलब पारदर्शिता, मेरिट के आधार पर सरकार, लोगों की डिजिटल भागीदारी, सच का पता लगाने वाली टेक्नोलॉजी और पूरी दुनिया में नैतिक मूल्यों पर बातचीत।
लेकिन अब आता है $1 मिलियन का सवाल। अगर ये आइडिया इतना ही अच्छा है, तो इसे कोई फंड क्यों नहीं कर रहा? जवाब बहुत सीधा है, क्योंकि ये सिस्टम मौजूदा पावर स्ट्रक्चर को, यानी नेताओं को, मीडिया को और बड़े बड़े पैसे वालों को सीधी चुनौती देता है। सच ताकतवर लोगों को अक्सर चुपता है, और जो सिस्टम अपनी ताकत बनाए रखने के लिए बना हो, वो भला ऐसी किसी चीज को क्यों सपोर्ट करेगा जो उसी के राज खोल दे?
तो फिर आगे का रास्ता क्या है? इस विजन को हकीकत बनाने के लिए सोर्स 3 अलग अलग रास्ते सुझाता है। पहला रास्ता है, एक ग्लोबल ट्रांसपेरेंसी नेटवर्क बनाया जाए जो करप्शन को उजागर करे। लेकिन जाहिर है सरकारें इसका विरोध करेंगी।
दूसरा ऑप्शन है दुनिया भर के इंटेलेक्चुअल्स जो बुद्धिजीवी हैं उनका एक गठबंधन बने जो युद्ध के खिलाफ आवाज उठाए, पर इसमें भी पॉलिटिकल प्रेशर का खतरा है। और तीसरा रास्ता है एक सिटीजन एआई मूवमेंट, मतलब आम लोग एआई का इस्तेमाल करें लोकतंत्र को मजबूत करने के लिए, लेकिन इसमें भी इसके गलत इस्तेमाल का रिस्क तो है ही।
और ये सारी बातें हमें एक सेंट्रल मैसेज की तरफ ले जाती हैं, एक ऐसा संदेश जो सॉस में बताए गए एक गाने से आता है। और ये सिर्फ सुनने वाली बात नहीं है, ये एक कॉल टू एक्शन है, मतलब कुछ करने की पुकार। और वो मैसेज बहुत ही साफ है, शिकायत मत करो, जिम्मेदारी लो, कुछ काम करो। मतलब सिर्फ बैठकर सिस्टम को कोसने के बजाय जिम्मेदारी लेने का वक्त है, कुछ करने का वक्त है। ये एक तरह से चुपचाप दर्शक बने रहने से उठकर मैदान में उतरकर कुछ करने का बुलावा है। तो कुल मिलाकर बात यह है कि अगर दुनिया को इस खतरनाक रास्ते से मोड़ना है तो 3 चीजें बहुत जरूरी हैं। 1. सच दिखाने वाली टेक्नोलॉजी। 2. नैतिक लीडरशिप यानी ईमानदार नेता। और 3. सबसे जरूरी, जागरूक और एक्टिव नागरिक। और आखिर में ये पूरा एनालिसिस हमें एक बहुत ही दमदार सोच के साथ छोड़ जाता है। अगर हम इतिहास उठाकर देखें तो बड़े बड़े बदलाव हमेशा कुछ गिने चुने जागे हुए लोगों ने ही किए हैं। तो सवाल बस इतना सा है कि क्या हम भी उन जागे हुए लोगों में से एक हो सकते हैं?
Welcome to another deep dive. Today we're unpacking something pretty massive.
Yeah, it's an incredibly ambitious framework.
Right. We're looking at a fascinating keynote address and a cinematic speech script. And it all centers around a campaign called the MaBharti Vision.
Along with this initiative called AI.3rd IYE, and this really powerful anthemic song titled Kuch Kaam.
Which translates basically to a call to action to, do some work or take responsibility.
Exactly. And the whole mission of this deep dive is to unpack the central argument of this campaign.
Which is that humanity is at this crazy crossroads. Like, we have unbelievable technological advancement, but we're also facing devastating global conflicts.
Right. And their argument is that the only way to save the world is this specific fusion of artificial intelligence, ethics, and active citizenship.
But before we jump in, I need to give a quick disclaimer to you listening.
Yeah, it's probably a good idea given the material.
The source material touches on some highly charged geopolitical conflicts. It references the Russia-Ukraine war, rising Middle East tensions, and it explicitly lays out a scenario for a 2026 Iran war.
Right, where it states that the U.S. and Israel attack Iran, and then Iran retaliates with missiles and drones, impacting Gulf security and oil supplies.
Exactly. And I want to be super clear, neither of us are taking sides here. We aren't endorsing any viewpoints or validating the political claims made in this text.
No, not at all. Our sole mission today is just to impartially report on and analyze the framework exactly as it's presented in the sources.
Okay, let's unpack this. We have to start with the core problem they identify. Why is the world literally on fire when we're at the peak of technological progress?
Well, the text diagnoses this by pointing to 3 parallel powers driving these conflicts: muscle power, money power, and narrative power.
Muscle and money make sense, right? Like military might, the arms industry, oil, gas, the resources.
Yeah, those are the tangible drivers.
Yeah.
But narrative power is, it's basically propaganda.
Where every single side claims that they are the righteous ones.
Exactly. And the text actually dubs this the War of Idiots.
The War of Idiots. Wow. That's a strong phrase.
It is. But they use it to emphasize that these are wars of ego, not intelligence. The decision makers, politicians, arms lobbies, they make the calls from safe rooms.
While regular humanity, like soldiers and civilians and kids, pay the ultimate price, the text says it's echoing the mistakes of 1914 and World War I.
Right. Our tech evolved, but our egos didn't. What's fascinating here is how the source frames modern warfare not as a failure of technology, but as a total failure of human ego and resource management.
For you listening, I thought of an analogy for this. It's like humanity has built this state-of-the-art high-speed train using AI and quantum science.
Oh, I like where this is going.
Yeah, but we've handed the controls over to people who only care about who has the biggest engine and the most fuel.
Well, the passengers they're just sitting in the back.
Right. Just regular civilians bracing for a crash.
Which brings us to the next point. If egos and money are driving the train, why isn't anyone hitting the brakes?
Yeah, where are the smart people? Which leads to the source's most piercing critique, I think. This concept of intellectual silence.
Yes. The keynote argues that the most dangerous element right now isn't the weapons, it's that the intellectuals are completely silent.
The scientists, the thinkers, the university professors. The text says they're quiet out of fear, or they're divided into ideological camps.
Or they're just too busy enjoying their comfortable lives to speak up and challenge the narrative.
There's this super powerful visual in the cinematic script for this. It describes these sweeping shots of totally empty university halls.
And silent thinkers, just sitting there while the world burns outside.
History shows that when intellectuals go quiet, the world slides into war. But wait, I have to push back on this a little bit.
Okay, what's your take?
Isn't it kind of harsh to blame the teachers and the scientists? I mean, if the money and muscle powers hold all the military cards, what can a silent intellectual actually do?
It's a fair question. But the text views intellectuals as the only natural counterweight to narrative power.
Because you can't fight propaganda with a tank.
Exactly. Propaganda requires the absence of truth to survive. If the intellectuals, the people trained to analyze facts, don't speak, the propaganda wins by default.
Ah, I see. So it's about the vacuum they leave behind.
Right. And since human intellect is currently either silent or totally fractured, the source material introduces a technological bridge.
A way to force transparency. This is where the MaBharti vision comes in.
Yes. It's this grand dream of combining AI, deep ethics, and national character to essentially build a new civilization.
And the engine for this whole thing is a tool called AI.third.ii.
A global platform designed specifically to catch lies, expose corruption, flag misinformation, and just help society make the right decisions.
Here's where it gets really interesting. It's basically a global, real-time polygraph test mixed with an incorruptible auditor.
That's a great way to put it. And they break this vision down into 5 specific pillars. First are the AI transparency platforms.
Right. Things like E3.I, eJudge, and ENFRA.
Then the second pillar is merit-based governance. Third is citizen digital participation.
Getting everyone involved online.
Fourth is the truth detection technology itself. And fifth is global ethical dialogue.
If we connect this to the bigger... Wait, sorry, I'm stealing your line.
Go for it. It's all yours.
No, you say it. You're the expert.
Fair enough. If we connect this to the bigger picture, it totally shifts how we view AI. In the real world, we talk about AI taking jobs or being a weapon.
Right, autonomous drones, corporate profit, that kind of stuff.
Exactly. But this framework repurposes it entirely. It views AI as truth technology, designed to govern by merit, not by muscle.
But that brings us to a huge reality check. If this truth technology is the perfect solution, why doesn't it exist yet?
Funding. The text is incredibly blunt about this. Truth makes powerful people very uncomfortable.
Yeah, I mean, the current system is definitely not going to fund a platform that challenges political power.
Or media lies, or wealthy lobbies. A corrupt system will never underwrite its own auditor.
So if the very people with the money are the ones who stand to lose the most from AI.third, IYE, how does a project like this ever get off the ground?
The document actually lays out 3 specific paths to implement this, along with the pros and cons of each.
Okay, let's walk through those. What's path 1?
Path 1 is an AI-based global transparency network. Think of it as a top-down institutional approach.
The pros there seem pretty obvious. It would expose corruption instantly and improve global policy.
Right. But the con is massive. Governments will fiercely resist it. It would lead to endless fights over data control and sovereignty.
Because no politician wants a mathematically objective auditor checking their math in real time.
Exactly. So that leads to path 2, which is a global intellectual alliance.
Getting all the smart people on the same page?
Yes. The pro is that it creates a unified anti-war voice. It solves the intellectual silence problem directly.
But let me guess. The con is that getting academics to agree on anything is nearly impossible.
Spot on. They'd face severe political pressure and huge internal ideological divides.
Which leaves path 3, the citizen AI movement.
Right. A totally grassroots approach. The pro is that it strengthens democracy from the bottom up by linking every citizen directly to AI tools.
Bypassing the gatekeepers entirely. But the cons are tough, right?
Very tough. There's a high risk of the tools being misused by bad actors. Plus, there's a massive barrier of poor digital literacy.
Right. Asking a global population to become data analysts overnight is a tall order, so it recognizes its own paradox.
Yes. The tech needs to rely directly on the citizens, but cold, hard data doesn't inspire mass movements.
Because people are exhausted. You can't just hand them an algorithm and expect a revolution.
Which is why the keynote makes this fascinating pivot. Because the traditional systems won't fund this, it pivots to the ultimate driving force, human willpower.
It introduces a cultural call to action.
Yes. The song, Kuch, Kaam. It's described not just as music, but as a national awakening.
And the core message of the song is literally, stop complaining, take responsibility, and do something.
The cinematic script details for this are incredible. They envision this deep, serious voiceover.
Specifically in the style of Amitabh Bachchan, right? That commanding, legendary voice.
Exactly. And it's accompanied by these visceral visuals. It starts with a burning earth.
The ultimate visualization of the War of Idiots.
Right. And then, as the voiceover talks about the cost of apathy, the visuals transition
into India's rising sun and this hopeful, digitally empowered future.
The ultimate conclusion is that soldiers alone won't save the world. Tech alone won't save the world.
To save humanity, you need three things working together: truth technology, ethical leadership, and active citizens.
Because, as the script states, if good people do nothing, evil will always win.
So what does this all mean? Try to visualize that cinematic script for a second. You're sitting in a dark room.
You hear that deep voice over the rising music.
And it transitions from a sterile tech pitch about algorithms into this deeply emotional plea.
This raises an important question, honestly. It's about the intersection of art and technology. Well, the source uses a song, a deeply emotional, artistic medium, to drive the adoption of cold, hard data transparency.
Because humans need to feel the urgency in their chest, not just understand the math in their head.
Exactly. You need the art to motivate the public to use the AI.
Well, we've covered a massive amount of ground today. Let's try to summarize this journey.
It really is a journey. We started with the bleak reality of the War of Idiots,
where muscle, money, and narrative power are driving us off a cliff, aided by the intellectual silence of our smartest people.
Then we explored the ambitious technological cure AI.3rd, AIE, as the digital immune system for humanity.
And finally, we hit the funding wall, realizing that the only way to build this is through the personal responsibility demanded by the anthem Kuch, Kaam.
It's a huge shift from relying on institutions to relying on individual action.
It really is. And for you listening, it asks a direct question. What is your own digital literacy like?
Are you an active citizen verifying the truth?
Or are you just a silent observer watching the War of Idiots unfold, hoping someone else hits the brakes on the train?
It's definitely something to reflect on.
But before we sign off, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought based on this material.
I'm ready. Let's hear it.
The source material warns us constantly about the dangers of intellectual silence and the lack of funding for truth technology.
Right.
But it makes you wonder if a truly incorruptible AI were suddenly switched on tomorrow, exposing all global truth without any filter at all.
Just absolute radical transparency.
Exactly. Is humanity actually ready to hear it? Or would that level of radical transparency just start an entirely new kind of war?
Wow. That's a heavy thought.
Something to chew on. Thanks for joining us for another deep dive. Keep questioning the world around you, and we'll see you next time. So if you think back to the year 1914, you have some of the most highly educated, seemingly rational leaders in the world.
Right.
And they basically sleepwalked their nations into a catastrophic global war, driven largely by, unchecked ego, tangled alliances, and honestly, just an utter failure of wisdom.
Yeah, a complete collapse of rational foresight.
Exactly. And today, as we're staring down the barrel of converging global crises, there's this radical new manifesto that argues we are making the exact same mistake.
But this time, the blueprint to save us doesn't rely on traditional diplomacy.
No, it doesn't. It relies on an artificial intelligence lie detector and, of all things, a Bollywood-style campaign song.
It really is a staggering contrast. I mean, we are looking at a highly structured campaign that attempts to diagnose the absolute root causes of global warfare.
Right.
And then it offers a technological and philosophical cure that bypasses traditional geopolitical channels entirely.
Which is wild. So welcome to this deep dive. Today, we are unpacking a fascinating set of sources for you. We've got a keynote address and a cinematic campaign script that outline this sweeping global movement.
Yeah.
And the mission here is to understand how this framework proposes using a really unique blend of AI, ethics, and a cultural call to action to pull humanity back from what the material provocatively calls a war of idiots.
The premise is incredibly ambitious because it doesn't just treat global conflicts as, isolated system errors to be patched
Right,
up.
like putting a Band-Aid on it.
Exactly. It treats the entire global operating system as corrupted.
Mhm.
Like it requires a fundamental rewrite of how power and truth operate on the world stage.
And before we get into the mechanics of how that rewrite actually works, we need to set the stage for you. The source material maps out a very specific, volatile 2026 geopolitical scenario.
It does, yeah. Very detailed.
It references ongoing conflicts like the Russia-Ukraine war and Middle East regional tensions, but it explicitly hinges on a hypothetical 2026 Iran war. And this scenario involves U.S. and Israeli strikes, Iranian missile and drone retaliation, and severely disrupted global oil supplies. Now, I want to be very clear here.
Definitely.
Regardless of where anyone stands politically on Middle Eastern conflicts, whether you lean left, right, or center, we are not taking sides here.
No, not at all.
What's fascinating is how the author uses this scenario not to endorse a political viewpoint, but as a stress test for their AI transparency model.
That framing is crucial. We are just examining the diagnostic lens the author applies to modern warfare.
Exactly. We're observing the mechanics of the argument rather than litigating the specific geopolitical conflicts themselves.
Right, we're looking at the framework.
Okay, let's unpack this. How do we go from a burning world to an AI-driven solution?
Well, the framework strips away the complex diplomatic jargon.
It really boils the root causes of all these global conflicts down to three primary forces: muscle power, money power, and narrative power.
Yes, the three pillars of the problem.
Now, we all know what muscle power is, right? It's the raw military flexing, the hardware, the troops.
Yeah, the physical force.
But the source argues the real danger lies in how the other two manipulate that muscle. It's like a deadly game of high-stakes poker where the players are using other people's money and lives as chips.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, you can think of society as a physical body with a corrupted immune system.
Oh, I like that analogy.
So the muscle power of the military is the inflammatory response. It's the body attacking itself.
Oh, right.
But the military doesn't just deploy itself for no reason. It is triggered by narrative power.
The propaganda machine.
Exactly. The media spin, the algorithmically driven echo chambers. Narrative power acts like a virus, tricking the immune system into believing there is a deadly external threat that must be destroyed.
Which guarantees that every single side in a conflict genuinely believes they're the absolute heroes and the other side is the villain.
Yes.
But why introduce the virus in the first place? Like, who benefits? That's where the money power comes in.
Precisely. The money power is the parasite feeding off the inflammation.
Wow.
The framework specifically points to the global weapon industries, the oil and gas lobbies, and the syndicates fighting over natural resources.
Because war, when you strip away all its ideological dressing, is just an incredibly profitable enterprise for a very concentrated group of sectors.
They use narrative power to manufacture righteousness, which then deploys the muscle power, and that secures the financial interests of the money power.
And that dynamic right there is the core justification for that incredibly harsh term the source uses, the war of idiots.
It's a provocative phrase.
It really is. The term implies that the decisions are made by politicians and the arms lobbies sitting in secure, air-conditioned rooms. They're playing this cynical game.
While the people who actually pay the ultimate price are the soldiers, the everyday civilians, and the children on the ground.
Exactly.
And that brings us back to that 1914 historical parallel. The framework argues that the failure of intelligence leading to World War I wasn't a lack of data or a lack of educated diplomats.
Right.
It was a failure of wisdom and an excess of ego. The leaders of 1914 let the narrative of nationalistic pride and the economic pressures of empire override rational thought.
So the diagnostic claim here is that human intelligence, when left to its own devices within systems of concentrated power, repeatedly and cyclically fails.
It's a cyclical failure, yeah.
Which forces a really uncomfortable question. If the leaders are acting like idiots and are trapped in this cycle, where are all the smart people?
Yeah, where is everybody else?
Right. Where is the intellectual class that is supposed to be acting as the conscience of society?
The material identifies their absence as the true underlying tragedy of our era. It calls this phenomenon intellectual silence.
Intellectual silence.
The scientists, the great teachers, the philosophers, the framework argues they have essentially vacated the public square.
The text suggests they are either terrified of being canceled or targeted, or they're carved up into opposing ideological camps where they only speak to their own tribes.
Or, frankly, they are just too comfortable in their tenured private lives to risk standing up to the money and narrative powers.
I mean, I have to push back a little here. Is it really fair to blame the intellectuals for wars they didn't start?
It's a valid question.
Like you're asking professors and philosophers to go up against the global arms lobby and state-sponsored propaganda machines. Isn't that a bit naive?
Well, it is an enormous burden, but the underlying logic of the framework is based on the physics of a vacuum. Power abhors a vacuum.
Okay.
When the people who possess the capacity for complex, nuanced thought and historical perspective refuse to engage in the messy public discourse, they leave a void.
And that void gets filled.
Instantaneously.
Yeah.
By the loudest, most extreme voices, the virus of narrative power.
So the tragedy isn't that intellectuals start the wars.
No, the tragedy is that their critical thinking is the only known antidote to the propaganda virus, and they are refusing to administer it.
Wow. And the cinematic campaign script included in our sources visualizes this brilliantly.
And it really does.
It describes these somber, slow panning shots of pristine, empty university lecture halls and silent scientists. And that's directly juxtaposed against chaotic visuals of a world quite literally on fire.
The intellectual classes retreated to the ivory tower while the foundations of the building burn.
Okay, so human leaders are trapped by ego, and human intellectuals are paralyzed by fear or comfort. It paints a fairly bleak picture of human capacity.
It's definitely grim.
But here's where it gets really interesting, because the framework completely abandons human-only solutions.
It pivots hard.
It pivots to a technological savior, introducing a concept called the MaBharti vision and a digital platform known as AI.third.ie.
This is the radical core of the blueprint. The MaBharti vision attempts to build a new kind of civilizational infrastructure by merging three distinct elements:
Which are?
artificial intelligence, ethical frameworks, and national character.
Okay.
And it breaks this vision down into 5 specific pillars, starting with the creation of AI transparency platforms.
And the proposed tools under this pillar have these very stark descriptive names, like E3I, eJudge, and ENFRA.
Yes.
But wait, pause on eJudge for a second. How does an AI actually judge truth in a geopolitical crisis?
It's complex.
Like, if we look at that 2026 Iran war scenario, is the AI just checking political claims against a locked database of facts? Or is it analyzing the sentiment of the rhetoric? How do you code an algorithm to neutralize propaganda?
Well, the framework envisions a system of algorithmic objectivity that attacks the root of narrative power. Think about how ENFRA and eJudge would theoretically work together.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
It wouldn't just be a simple fact checker, it would be a real-time tracking mechanism. If a politician makes a claim to justify a military strike, the AI instantly cross-references that claim against global satellite data, historical precedent, and crucially, financial flows.
Ah, so it follows the money.
It tracks the metadata of the narrative. Who is funding the media network broadcasting the claim?
Yeah.
Which arms manufacturer just saw a spike in stock value? It exposes the parasite.
So it's essentially mapping the invisible strings of the money power in real time for the entire world to see. It's like having a digital lie detector that instantly fact-checks every politician and media network.
Exactly the intent.
Incredible.
The second pillar is merit-based governance, which relies on this transparent data to ensure leadership is driven by measurable competence rather than, political maneuvering.
Right. And the third pillar?
The third is citizen digital participation. Fundamentally bringing the everyday person, the ones whose lives are usually treated as disposable chips, into the digital ecosystem to monitor this data.
Which makes total sense. Then the fourth pillar is the truth detection technology itself, which powers everything we just discussed.
Yes.
And the fifth is fostering a global ethical dialogue using the shared objective baseline established by the AI to actually have productive conversations instead of screaming matches.
The sheer ambition is staggering.
Right.
I mean, if narrative power relies on spinning the truth, muddying the waters, and hiding financial motives, AI.third, IYA, is designed to act as a massive societal lie detector.
To just cut through the spin.
Yes, and force transparency onto systems that thrive in the shadows.
Imagine a global dashboard that just lights up red the second a lobbyist tries to spin a narrative for profit, instantly notifying every citizen holding a smartphone.
It would be revolutionary.
It's wild to think about, but having a brilliant architectural blueprint is very different from actually pouring the concrete.
Very true.
And the source material is surprisingly self-aware about this friction. It immediately transitions into cinematic visuals of empty meeting tables and a desperate, ongoing search for funding.
Yeah, it doesn't shy away from the reality of the situation.
So if the massive money lobbies and the political elite are actively blocking this tech because it threatens their entire existence, how on earth does it get built? Does the campaign actually have a backdoor strategy to get this funded and deployed.
Well, what's fascinating here is how the framework maps out three distinct strategic pivots.
Yeah.
It's trying to find a viable path forward against entrenched resistance.
Okay, walk us through them.
It starts from the top down. Path 1 proposes an AI-based global transparency network.
The upside there is obvious, right? A centralized global network would drastically reduce misinformation and lead to incredibly optimized policy decisions.
Absolutely.
But the friction is massive. The framework acknowledges that sovereign governments will violently resist this.
Oh, without a doubt.
You would see immediate geopolitical battles over data control, because whoever controls the transparency network essentially holds the keys to global power. No superpower is going to hand over its internal data to an objective third-party AI.
Exactly. Finding the top-down route blocked, the strategy pivots to the middle layer. Path 2 is the Global Intellectual Alliance.
Trying to fix the intellectual silence.
Precisely. This is an attempt to get the world's scientists, economists, and thinkers onto a single unified platform to validate the data and provide a counter-narrative to state propaganda.
It sounds great in theory, a unified global conscience. But getting all the world's smartest people to agree on a single interpretation of truth is a monumental task.
It's like herding cats.
Yeah. And the framework itself points out that this alliance would immediately face intense political pressure from their respective host countries. Not to mention the deep ideological divides that already exist within academia.
Which forces the final, most radical pivot. Since the top-down network is blocked by governments and the middle-layer alliance is bogged down by academic infighting and fear, Path 3 goes entirely grassroots.
The people.
Yes, it proposes a citizen AI movement. This involves bypassing the traditional gatekeepers completely and equipping everyday citizens directly with these AI truth detection tools.
Which democratizes the immune system. It strengthens society from the ground up because suddenly millions of people have the algorithmic capacity to spot the propaganda virus in real time.
That's the hope. But the risks associated with Path 3 are severe.
Like what?
Well, the framework highlights the massive roadblock of digital illiteracy. If you hand a highly complex AI tool to a population that doesn't understand how to interpret data, the tool is useless.
Or dangerous.
Exactly. Worse, bad actors could weaponize the very tools designed for transparency, using deepfakes and algorithmic manipulation to create even more sophisticated noise.
So the system won't fund its own disruption. Governments will fight the global network. Intellectuals are too divided. And a citizen movement risks mass confusion.
It's a daunting list of roadblocks.
With all of that, what actually serves as the engine for this entire movement? How does the author expect to generate enough momentum to push through the friction?
This is where the source material steps away from white paper analytics and does something deeply cultural.
Right.
It anchors the entire mission with a song.
A song. And the title of the song is Kuch, Kaam, which translates roughly to do some work.
Yes.
And the material provides a highly detailed script for a cinematic video concept to accompany this track. The tone it sets is incredibly specific.
Very deliberate.
It mandates a deep, serious voiceover, deliberately referencing the iconic, commanding style of Bollywood legend Amitabh Bachchan. It is designed to resonate on an emotional, almost visceral level.
The visual storyboard is striking because it visually resolves the conflicts we've been discussing. It opens with the world in crisis.
Right. Slow, ominous music, playing over footage of burning earth, frantic news clips, and missiles launching. It establishes the immediate threat of the war of idiots.
Then the camera moves away from the destruction and shows those quiet, pristine universities. It visually condemns the silence of the intellectuals.
But then the music shifts.
The visuals transition into glowing digital networks, representing the AI waking up, the concept of transparency spreading across the globe.
And the climax of the storyboard features the rising sun of India merging with the digital future, completely synchronized with the rising anthemic music of Kuch, Kaam.
The cultural wrapper is vital here. It takes a cold, complex technological solution and infuses it with national character and artistic emotion.
Because the ultimate message of the song isn't a technical manual, it's a blunt, national call to action. It is essentially telling the population to stop complaining about the corruption of the world, stop waiting for politicians to fix it, and take personal responsibility. Do some work.
The fundamental argument driving the campaign is that the 2026 scenarios of the world will not be stopped by soldiers or diplomats alone.
No.
The cycle of the war of idiots can only be broken by scientists who refuse to be silent and by an awake, digitally literate citizenry that actively monitors the truth.
So what does this all mean? We've covered a massive amount of conceptual ground here today, moving from the systemic root causes of global warfare to a highly specific AI transparency architecture, all propelled by a Bollywood-style cinematic anthem.
Synthesizing the framework, the author is ultimately arguing that saving the global operating system requires the simultaneous activation of three elements.
Okay, let's hear them.
First, you need truth technology, like the AI.3 IYE platform, capable of untangling the financial and narrative webs in real time.
Right.
Second, you need ethical leadership and merit-based governance to replace the ego-driven decision-makers.
Amazing.
And third, none of it works without active citizens who are willing to wield the technology and break the intellectual silence.
And that final point is where this deep dive points directly at you, the listener. It forces you to look at your own role within this massive global system.
It really is.
Are you operating as an active citizen? Are you doing the work to verify the information you consume? Or are you passively allowing the virus of narrative power to manipulate your emotions, making you just another chip in the high-stakes game?
It's a tough mirror to look into.
It is. The entire premise of this framework is a stark reminder that history is rarely changed by the masses. It is changed by a few awake individuals who decide they are no longer willing to remain quiet while the building burns.
It is a profound call for individual agency, utilizing cutting-edge technology to neutralize ancient human flaws. But this raises an important question, something that lingers just beyond the edge of the source material's optimism. Well, the framework envisions this AI platform as a flawless, objective detector of truth, designed to expose corruption and neutralize propaganda.
Right.
But if we somehow bypassed the lobbies, overcame the political friction, and successfully deployed a perfect truth technology tomorrow, is human society actually brave enough to handle absolute, unfiltered transparency?
Oh, wow.
Or, when faced with the undeniable algorithmic proof of our own collective ego, bias, and complicity, would we just end up going to war with the AI?
That is a terrifying thought. We started by looking at a planetary dashboard blinking red, hoping a new operating system could fix the errors. But perhaps the greatest risk isn't that the new system fails to turn the lights on. The greatest risk is what we might do when we are finally forced to look at what the lights reveal.